Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. Welcome to Hunting for Answers, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Hunter. In Decatur, Georgia, a young couple returns home after a late night trip out. They have children, another baby on the way. And family members are looking forward to celebrating that new arrival. It should have been a normal night. But before the sun comes up, everything changes. This is the story of Briana Brooks. Briana Brooks was 21 years old. She was a mother, a daughter, a fiancé, and in August of 2014, she was 7 months pregnant. She and her fiancé, Jeronta Brown, were raising 2 children and preparing for the arrival of a third. For them, life revolved around family, around their children, and a new baby who would soon be here. Later reporting on the case described Briana as spunky, outgoing, someone who spoke her mind. Jeronta, by comparison, was often described as quieter, more reserved. They were different in personality, but they were working toward the same goals: raising their family, building their future. Shortly after midnight, Calvin Reddick called 911. He reported that several men wearing masks were outside his Decatur home. Reports say the men wanted inside, but the people in the house did not open the door. Before police arrived, the men left the area. At that moment, it may have seemed as though the situation was over. But it wasn't. As investigators worked to understand what had happened, they learned that 2 people were unaccounted for: Briana Brooks and Jeronta Brown. Investigators later believed the couple arrived while the men were still near the home, and according to investigators, they had been abducted. As officers remained at the home, the phone rang. The call came from a blocked number. On the other end was a demand for money. According to reporting, the caller demanded $150,000. Then the call ended before police could trace it. Not long after, the phone rang again. This time, it was Jeronta. He was still alive, and according to investigators, he was afraid. He pleaded for help. For a moment, the family knew he was still there. Then the phone was handed to police, and the call ended. Investigators moved quickly. They learned the men had left in a light-colored van. A bolo was issued. Surrounding agencies were notified. And officers began searching for any sign of the couple. With every hour that passed, the urgency grew. Briana was expecting a child, and no one knew where she and Jeronta were, or whether they were still alive. By this point, investigators knew that money was connected to the case. A ransom had been demanded, and as detectives worked to understand why this couple had been targeted, a possible motive began to emerge. Reports on the case indicated the people behind the kidnapping believed someone connected to the family had access to a significant amount of money. And investigators believed that belief helped set the crime in motion. Before dawn, The search took a devastating turn. In northwest Atlanta, officers responded to a remote area after reports that two people had been found on the side of the road. Those two people were Briana Brooks and Jeronta Brown. They were handcuffed together, their hands restrained behind their backs. Both had been shot. Jeronta had died. Briana was also suffering from a gunshot wound, but she was still alive. Medics rushed her to Grady Memorial Hospital. She was critically injured. At the hospital, doctors were faced with an extraordinary situation. Briana's condition was grave. Reports say doctors were able to deliver Briana's daughter. In the midst of tragedy that had already taken so much, a child was brought into the world. But Briana never recovered. Days later, Briana Brooks lost her life. As investigators processed the scene, they began reconstructing the final hours of the kidnapping. According to reporting, shell casings were recovered at the location where Briana and Jeronta were found. That evidence led investigators to believe the shooting occurred there. But even with that discovery, key questions remained. Who was responsible? And where would the evidence lead next? Detectives continued following every lead they could find. And then, the investigation caught a break. Reports say investigators obtained evidence from an accidental call, a butt dial. It didn't provide the entire story, but it gave detectives something to work with. On this recording, investigators reportedly heard voices they believed were connected to the kidnapping. At one point, a voice was reportedly heard saying, "We ain't trying to hurt your baby, ma'am." Investigators believed the recording could help identify the people involved. And as they followed the evidence, the picture became clearer. Over time, two names emerged: Andre Gay and Richard Wilson. According to prosecutors, the two men knew each other from prison, and investigators believed the men were involved in the kidnapping and killings. In September 2014, Andre Gay was arrested. Not long after, Richard Wilson was located in Birmingham, Alabama. He was arrested there and returned to Georgia. For the families of Briana and Jeronta, the arrests brought some answers, but the case was far from over. For years, the case moved toward trial. Then, in September 2018, Andre Gay and Richard Wilson pleaded guilty. The guilty pleas meant the case would not go to trial. Both men were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives in prison without parole, along with additional decades added to their sentences. 4 years after the kidnapping and killings, the case had finally reached its conclusion. In court, Briana's mother, Sidria Strong, finally faced the men who had taken her daughter. She told local media, "I promised her justice," and she got it today. Just hours before, the future seemed clear. A growing family, a new baby, and plans for what came next. By morning, a family was changed forever. Our thoughts are with the family and loved ones of Briana Brooks and Jeronta Brown. For more cases and updates, follow Hunting for Answers. You can also connect with us through our Facebook group and find us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If there's a story you believe deserves attention, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Until next time. Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network. For more podcasts from the Black Effect Podcast Network, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.